So yesterday I did a video talking about why anti-feminism is on the rise in the UK, which I've linked below. And I said that it's possible the reason why more people are becoming anti-feminist in the UK is because feminism is becoming extreme and feminists are supporting discrimination against men. Well, today I want to show you two examples I found since yesterday of feminists in the UK trying to support laws that would discriminate against men. The reason why I'm making this video and showing you these two examples is that you know that when I say feminists discriminate against men, it's not something that I'm just making up or reading on some crazy right-wing blog. I'm looking at the words and actions of actual feminists. I'm looking at what feminists actually say and actually do. And sure enough, less than 24 hours after I made yesterday's video, I found two articles of feminists advocating for disparity in law and discrimination against men. So let's take a look at the first one. So here's the article here, which I've linked below. Men in Scotland who loudly boast about sexual conquest in public could face jail. Basically, what this is a proposed anti-misogyny law to protect women from harassment. Now, pay attention and bear with me because I'm not saying I'm necessarily against that, so just see where I'm going with this. Men who loudly discuss their sexual conquests in public could face up to 7 years in jail under plans to criminalize misogyny in Scotland. A consultation published by the Scottish National Party government proposes creating 5 new laws designed to outlaw abusive and humiliating male behavior, which is claimed stops women fully participating in society. Under a new offense of misogynistic behavior, it would be not necessary for an offender to directly address a woman to be found guilty under the plans. Instead, they could watch pornography where others could see it or have loud, graphic sexual conversations about women in a public place while they could be heard by others. Meanwhile, under a new offense of misogynistic harassment, an offense would be committed if a man shouts sexually abusive remarks at a woman in the street or uses abusive language to a girl who does not want to be chatted up, which is UK speak for hit on. Now, again, I'm not saying that some of these things shouldn't be illegal. And I'm not saying that harassment and misogyny isn't a problem. And I've put that article down below. I went to a few Scottish forums and UK political forums, and a lot of people are debating, the title's a clickbait because 7 years is only restricted for the most extreme cases. And I'm not really so much objecting to that part of the article. What I'm objecting to is this part right here. The fact that the law discriminates against men. Take a look. Women making unwanted sexually motivated advances towards men or discussing their sexual conquests in public would not face sanctions under the legislation. The report stated, and keep in mind, feminists put this report together, so this is their words. The report stated that the justice system had been designed by men, for men, and needed to adapt to meet the needs of over half of our society. But what exactly does that mean? Because if you are crafting this law, how hard would it be to also include male victims? They're going out of their way to make it clear that male victims will not be included in this law. Why? How does that help women? Does that mean that men aren't protected at all, no matter how extreme it is? So the thing that they were proposing is the most extreme case that would be worthy of 7 years in prison. Does that mean that a woman is allowed to do something that a man would get 7 years for? Like, what's the cutoff? How exactly does that work? If MRAs were behind this law, this wouldn't be a problem because MRAs never support gender discrimination. And on to the second issue. London mayor should look at lower rent for women, report says. And that's basically what it sounds like. I've put all these articles below. Campaigners are suggesting that women have lower rent than men for their apartments. So they use the wage gap to justify this. I'm going to read what it says in the article, then explain why it doesn't make any sense at all. The report suggests Mr. Khan should consider making London living rent homes available to women to rent based on women's median incomes rather than general median incomes. This means men would not be allowed to rent at those prices for those homes, according to the local democracy reporting service. It says women earning the median wage need to spend 63% of their earnings to afford the median private rent in London, compared to men needing to spend 49% of their earnings. Now, to understand why this argument doesn't make any sense, And first of all, I'm not even going to go into the problem with talking about the wage gap and how the wage gap has been debunked so many times, how the wage gap is mostly a product of male millionaires and billionaires offsetting the mean, how the vast majority of the homeless in London are men. Forget all that for a second and just think, how does this apply to men making minimum wage? There's a minimum wage in the UK, just like in the US, but those men would not have access to this program. Using the wage gap, real or not, to justify giving more affordable rent to women doesn't make any sense, because a poor man and a poor woman are both poor. They both need help affording rent. A man earning minimum wage in the UK is earning exactly the same as a woman earning minimum wage in the UK. The fact that there are more wealthy men earning six figures and more, and male millionaires and male billionaires, those people, that economic bracket, isn't affected by this anyway. So it's completely irrelevant if the average median male salary needs a smaller percent of their income to afford affordable housing, because the upper half of men in London aren't looking for affordable housing in the first place. So it's a completely meaningless statistic to use. What would make a lot more sense, and what the men's rights solution would be to make it by salary and income as opposed to by gender. Make it available to all people who earn below a certain amount, regardless of gender. Therefore, there's no gender discrimination, and everybody who needs help with rent has it. See how simple that is? This is why MRAs criticize feminism, because of things like this. And this is why people in the UK, as well as the rest of the world, are turning against feminism, because they read articles like this all the time. What are people supposed to think? And at what point do we say, when you look at the stats, men and boys aren't just no longer ahead, and we're not just falling behind, we've actually been behind for kind of a long time now. You know?